Goodrum Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Okay, this afternoon, this seems to be turning into quite a regular occurrence. An episode of the show featuring both Mac Myra and Smogen, two of my favourite distilleries, two of my favourite Swedish distilleries. There's many Swedish distilleries, but two of my favourite distilleries, it has to be said. And well, so we've got new releases from both those distilleries, and a couple of interesting bottlings as well. You might remember, I may have mentioned it before, but when I was in London for the final round of this year's World Whisky Awards, I was on the same table as Angela, and she said to me, did you know we did a bottling for Motorhead? And I went, yep, I did. And she said, have you ever tasted it? And I went, nope, can't say I have. She said, would you like a sample? And I went, would I like a sample? Well, of course I said yes. Getting offered a sample of that from someone like Angela, yeah, of course I said yes. And lo and behold, said sample duly arrived. Alex popped round a while ago with the new releases from the distillery, along with a couple of the Motorhead Whiskey and the Sweden Rocks 2017 bottling. So big thank you to Mac Myra and to Angela for sorting those out, and obviously a big thank you to Parr and Highfern for the sample of the latest release from Smogen. And I must admit, I kind of thought it might be quite a cool thing to do, that every time I mentioned Motorhead I'd play a clip of Motorhead, and then I thought, hang on, I'm probably going to fall foul of some copyright or other, which I have done in the past when it comes to music, so I thought I'm going to play it safe, and unfortunately I'm not going to do that. But anyway, hopefully that's not going to detract from the tasting, because at the end of the day, well, it's all about the whiskey really, isn't it? So so anyway, that's what we're doing today. Like I said, it's quite a regular occurrence, and certainly an occurrence that I quite enjoy. And talking of regular occurrences, next 2 or 3 episodes of the show, because I always seem to have a backlog of stuff ready and waiting to be to feature in an episode of the show, and only doing one a week, you know, they kind of back up a bit. But I've got a couple of interesting tastings kind of in the pipeline that I think you'll probably enjoy, and which will hopefully be a first, certainly if not a first for YouTube anyway. So, but anyway, that's for the future anyway. Let's have a look at today's lineup then, shall we? Okay, so first bottle we're looking at is the Motorhead Whiskey. Now this is batch number 5. Now look at the colour of that. I mean, I don't even make it out. I mean, that is dark. I mean, that is really active first fill bourbon casks. And although this is obviously not an official Mac Myra bottling, this is bottled for, well, I think it's bottled for a company called Brands for Fans, which I imagine has some kind of licensing deal with the band to bottle this whiskey. And I believe the band did have an input in the cask selection, certainly for the first release, and given Lemmy's penchant for Jack Daniel's Old Number 7 and that horrible nasty sweet stuff, it's pretty damn dark, isn't it? You know, it's like lots and lots of American oak going on there, so I think we can probably guess to what it's going to be like. But anyway, we shall indeed get there in due course. Second bottling we'll be looking at is an official Mac Myra bottling, now bottled for a 4-day rock festival that's held in Salzburg. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly, called Sweden Rock, and this is the bottling for 2017. It's 8 and 9 year old, or 8 to 9 year old spirit, which has been aged in a combination of first fill bourbon and Pedro Ximenez casks. So, and again, judging by the colour, I would imagine the sherry component is pretty light on that. So we shall see what that one's like. And then we're going to move on to the 2 new releases from the distillery. The first one is in the Seasons range, and I'm going to try and pronounce this correctly. Grugeld, I think, is the the pronunciation. Basically means, I believe, gold from the mine, and all of these casks that were selected for this particular bottling come from their well, I won't call it a warehouse, but the mine of Bodas, where they obviously mature a number of the casks. As you know, Mackmyra have several different locations for cask maturation, and each of those different locations gives a different character to the spirit that's matured there. And of course, it's a rum old selection of casks, shall we say. So basically, it is a blend of 30 litre first fill bourbon and 100 litre second fill bourbon, 30 litre virgin Swedish oak and 100 litre second fill Swedish oak, 30 litre first fill Oloroso, 30 litre virgin Swedish oak and second fill bourbon casks which have been seasoned with Pedro Ximénez, and 128 litre virgin and first fill bourbon casks that have been seasoned with Oloroso. Whew. Yeah, so it's a lot of different cask types going on there, so that should be quite an interesting bottling. And the fourth bottling we'll be looking at is the latest release in the Moment range. This is, right, okay, I'm going to try and pronounce this correctly, Faljamark, I believe, which I believe means Spirit of the Mountains, and the juice for said bottling ranges from 8 to 13 years of age, and it's another selection of different cask types. So we have a blend of 128 litre first fill American oak, which previously held cloudberry wine. Good old cloudberry wine. Never had it, but I seem to have tasted several bottlings of Mackmyra that have used these casks. 100 litre first fill Swedish oak, which previously held cloudberry wine. 100 litre first fill French oak, which previously held cloudberry wine. Yeah, indeed. But the filling of that, the spirit that filled it, is quite interesting, because it's what they call their smoke tail. For those of you that don't know what they mean by smoke tail, it is the first non-peated distillation they run through their stills after doing a peated run. So I'm guessing that it has the tail end of the smoke, basically. So yeah, slightly smoky, and but not full on peatiness. So that, and then we have 200 litre second fill bourbon, which previously held Oloroso, and 200 litre second fill bourbon, which previously held Pedro Ximénez. So again, nice combination of different cask types, and should be quite interesting. And while we're talking about different cask types, we're on to the final bottling, which is the new release from Schmogen called Barrique, with a exclamation mark. So no, I didn't get it wrong. It is, if you look at the label of the bottling, Barrique exclamation mark. It's a 7-year-old spirit, bottled at 60.3%, and it's a vatting of 4 French oak ex Bordeaux Barriques. Casks number 4 and 23 to 25/2010. It was distilled in September and December of 2010 and bottled in January of this year. So I think this is going to be really quite intriguing to see how the heavily peated spirit kind of works with ex Bordeaux Barriques. So yeah, there you go. That's this week's little lineup. I think it's going to be really interesting. So let's kick off with a bit of Motorhead. Okay, so remember me, my Motorhead, as they say. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? Big, bourbony, pretty sweet. It's got a youthful, slightly cereally kind of note, a little bit of almost kind of rye notes, which is obviously coming from the casks. It's not one-dimensional though. This is not Jack Daniel's old number 7. You know, this has, you know, some lovely depth to it. I'm getting a little bit of the classic estery, slightly banana-y, apricot-y Mackmyra spirit coming through. A little bit of toffee, some coffee as well. I mean, it kind of does what it says on the tin to a certain extent. It's what you would expect of a bottling that was selected by the guys in the band. But you know, it's a lovely nose. I mean, you know, a lot of oak, you know, and I can see people that sort of drank sort of old Number 7 would certainly be quite happy with this, and you know, maybe it would get them away from drinking that god awful stuff and into sort of drinking something a little bit more interesting and a little bit more complex, and not drowning the damn stuff in Coke, which is the only thing you can really do with old Number 7, it has to be said. But anyway, we're here to talk about this, not Jack Daniels. So anyway, let's see what the palate gives us then, shall we? Boy, that's a big oaky chunky palate. Lots and lots of cereal, lots of rye-like notes, coffee, a little bit of bitter chocolate. Again, you can just kind of taste underneath all of that oak the sort of the Mackmyra character, that slightly estery fruit. Lots of spice on the finish. And again, lots of, like I said, rye-like spice, and I'm guessing that, you know, this is all coming from these first fill bourbon casks, and a little racinated fruit right on the aftertaste, a little bit of sultana possibly. You know, I kind of quite like that. I mean, it's not a sort of a whiskey I would sort of opt to go for all the time, because it is, you know, pretty hefty on the oak character, and I wouldn't say it's one-dimensional, but it is kind of oak-centric, and but I think that's a lovely whiskey, and it's, like I said, I think it kind of does what it says on the tin, shall we say. So good starter. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Sweden Rock. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Now we're more classic Mackmyra. Lovely, slightly vanillaed, estery banana, apricot, a little bit of almost kind of gooseberry, I suppose. There's a little bit of youthfulness, there's a little bit of almost Mar-like spirit note, but you know, that's kind of quite nicely contained, and there's a subtle sherry note just right in the background, a little bit of kind of dried black fruit possibly, a little bit of treacle. I think that's a pretty well balanced nose in actual fact. I mean, it's like I said, it's got, you know, predominantly I would guess second fill American oak character, which has allowed sort of like the lovely sort of Mackmyra spirit character to come through. There's a little bit of sherry spice and dried fruit just in the background, and you know, this is an actually lovely balanced nose. I can quite see sort of like, you know, look, watching whoever was on that particular year. I think it was Aerosmith, I think. Saw them many years ago at Donington. When it was the Monsters of Rock Festival, yeah, that's a lovely appealing nose, it has to be said. Let's see what the palate gives us. A little bit youthful, certainly I'm getting a little bit of spiritiness kind of coming through on the finish, but it kind of adds a little bit of a bite to it. It opens up more with the sherry. I'm getting more of the pruny, sort of treacly, sort of PXy notes up front, and you can kind of again feel a little bit of the Mac Myra sort of estery fruit character sort of just sitting underneath that, and then it gets a little spirity right on the finish, but the fruit kind of comes back again, and excuse me. And yeah, it's a little drying on the finish, I will say. I mean, it's bottled at, it's only bottled at 40%. Quite chewy actually, quite a nice malty aftertaste. And yeah, I think sort of like if you've gone to the festival and purchased this at the festival, I don't think you'd be too disappointed by it. I think it's, again, yeah, pleasant. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Groove Gold. I didn't mention when I was first introducing it, but this is bottled at 46.1%, which is their sort of standard kind of bottling percentage. So let's see what nose gives us on this one, shall we? Fresh, youthful, and I don't know whether this is kind of sort of by association, but it kind of has a sort of a wet, stony minerality, and like I said, that's how, I mean, certainly I'm picking up sort of that kind of character. I mean, you know, if I'd been tasting this blind, that would have been on the tasting note, but it certainly has that kind of wet, stony kind of character. Quite a bit of oak as well, quite grippy. There's definitely some grippy sort of Swedish oak, French oak tannins happening. Touch of winey fruit as well. The sherry is kind of not hugely dominating, which is really good. Just kind of sat in the background, adding a little bit of wininess, a little bit of dried fruit, little herbal note. Getting a touch of earth now as well, but yeah, it's just wet stones. That's a lovely nose. I mean, it's really expressive, and you know, if that is the character that maturing in the mines gives to the spirit, then well, it kind of comes through pretty heavily, it has to be said. So, let's see what the palate's like. Opens up with some quite youthful, slightly estery fruit, touch of mar, and then the oak kind of comes in quite quickly, and it's a bit of vanilla, there's the grippy oak, sappy oak as well, a little bit of cereal, a little bit of spice, a little bit of wood spice, quite drying on the finish in actual fact. That there's a little bit of sherry notes right on the finish, a little bit of spiciness. It's a rum old battle, it has to be said. And what did I write in my tasting notes? Oh yes, it's just like Gandalf battling the Balrog. That's a mine reference if you didn't realise that. And it is quite a battle going on, it has to be said. Yeah, you get sort of like, you know, quite a bit of sort of youthful, fruity character, a lot of oak, and it is kind of just going bang, and it's entertaining, it has to be said. The oak kind of wins out a little bit right on the finish, hence it is quite drying, and there is a little bit of tannin. But I think there's just about enough sort of fruit character and richness to kind of balance that out. So it's not probably my favourite season's bottling, it has to be said, but it's certainly entertaining. Right, okay, and let's move on to the Fjalmark, however you pronounce it, the Spirit of the Mountains, that'll do, I can pronounce that. Anyway, let's see what the nose gives us. Now, considering all the cloudberry wine casks that have been used in this particular bottling, it's actually pretty well balanced. and it kind of opens up with some slightly more mature Mackmyra character. Again, estery, pineapple, banana, but it has a sort of straw-like kind of mature edge to them. Yes, the wine is noticeable. It's sitting in the background. I'm getting sort of musty, not musty, musky, not musty, musky, musky kind of sort of blackish sort of fruits. Hints of green apple. Touch of honey as well, possibly. A little bit of smokiness, just a smidge, which is obviously coming from the smoke tail. That is a wonderful nose. That is really, really complex. It's that sort of nose where you you put your nose in the glass and you go, oh yeah, I get that, and then oh, I get that. You know, it kind of slowly unwinds, and it is just like really complex. Which is what you would expect from a Moment bottling of, you know, 100 and something odd quid. And oh, that's just absolutely stunning. I mean, the balance is superb. Like I said, considering all the wine casks, the sherry, and all that kind of stuff, you know, it's still more centred on the American oak. I mean, yes, all right. So there's you know, their first fill casks. First and second fill bourbon casks, and then they're obviously seasoned with the sherry and the wine. But even so, I mean, when, like I said, in the past, I think sort of Angela is an absolute wizard when it comes to sort of putting all these different cask types together and getting the balance absolutely spot on. So yeah, that's a lovely nose. Let's see what the palate's like. Bit more sherry on the palate, kind of kicks off with the sort of prune, black cherry, a little bit of walnut, and then sort of mid palate in comes a little bit of grippy oak, a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of slightly estery apricot, bit of maybe some sort of almost kind of orange conserve-y kind of notes, a bit more black fruit. And then the sherry kind of comes back on the finish with more of the PX character, more of the sort of treacle, the licorice, the dark honey, a little bit of smoke, a little bit of spice. Yeah, I kind of like that because yes, there is a fair amount of sherry there, but it's not sort of like, you know, a one-dimensional overt sherry monster. There are layers, shall we say, and like I said, it has just a wonderful progression. It sort of almost kind of like starts off with the Oloroso notes, moves into the American oak, finishes with the Pedro Ximenez, and all the while you're getting that sort of winey cloudberry note kind of sort of interweaving with it, and a little bit of smoke on the finish. I mean, that is really, really complex. Absolutely fabulous whiskey. So very good. And finally, let's have a bit of Barrique then, shall we? Let's see what the nose gives us on this. Whoa, whoa, God, what the hell have we got going on here? Right, well, big peat, obviously, earthy, kind of dusty peat, burnt toast, blackberry jam, prune, fig, a little bit of raspberry jam as well, kind of coming through. Real intensity, lots and lots of grippy tannins, a little bit of coffee, touch of rose petal, some cloves, some nutmeg. Whoa, just a big nose, an immense nose. It's just slaps it around the face, it has to be said. I mean, this is certainly no shrinking violet, although I don't get any violet notes in actual fact, but there is a slight sort of almost kind of strawberry moussey sort of note, and yeah, quite jammy. The Bordeaux cask are obviously giving it that kind of jammy fruit kind of character. Maybe it was a very ripe vintage, I don't know. God, that is a lovely nose. I mean, that is really intense. Yeah, okay, you can argue I'm not getting a great deal of distillery character, and well, to be honest with you, there isn't there. I mean, apart from the peat, obviously, but no. So it's kind of one of those kind of mad sort of peat and wine combinations, which are always good fun, has to be said, and kind of go against the grain, shall we say, a little bit. But anyway, let's see what the palate's like. Wow, that's a drying finish. Lots and lots of peat smoke on the finish and wood tannins and spice. Kind of kicks off with the sort of like black red fruit conserve syrup kind of character. Oh, that's real tongue tingling aftertaste. It has to be said. It's like kind of, oh, what's it doing? Yes, that's partly down to the alcohol. I know it's 60.3. Really fruity, really big. Like I said, lots and lots of that sort of, you know, black red fruit kind of conserve, syrup, jam, figs, touch of walnut shell, a little bit of dark chocolate, grippy tannin, but not too bitter tannin. It's got a little bit of an edge to it, which is obviously being emphasised by the alcohol. But that is really intense and completely barking mad, it has to be said. But let's see what a little drop of water does to it. Right, it kind of knocks back some of that kind of overt wininess. I'm getting a little bit of barley notes, a bit of youthful spirit. The peat has become a little bit more astringent, which is really intriguing. It's less kind of smoky now, and more kind of astringent and herbal. There's a bit of smoked meat, possibly, linseed oil as well, sort of waxy, sort of oily nuts maybe. Yeah, that's a really intriguing. I mean, sometimes a lot of these sort of wine matured sort of spirits, certainly if they're bottled at cask strength, do change quite dramatically when you put a little drop of water with them, and this has certainly done so. Let's see what the palate's like then, shall we? Again, the peat has become quite sort of astringent, slightly salty, but also quite dry. There's some lovely sweet malt coming through now, a bit of chocolate. Again, less winey, less of that sort of syrupy fruit and conserve and jam and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of stripped a little bit of that away, and so it's kind of just kind of sitting in the background. So I'm getting a little bit more of the peat, a little bit more of the sort of barley character, a little bit more distillery character. Maybe not quite so mad, but you know, still really impressive. Lovely ashy, chocolatey aftertaste, and it's nothing like a bit of peat and chocolate in my opinion. So yeah, I think that is a superb whiskey. Right, okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show. Well, you're always guaranteed entertainment with the Swedes, it has to be said, and I think this particular tasting has been absolutely no exception to that. So we kicked off with a bit of Motorhead. No, I'm not playing any music. So yeah, it serves a purpose, I suppose. I can see why it was picked, why these casks were selected. Quality is really, really good. It's a bit straightforward. It's very, very oaky. But, you know, it's kind of enjoyable, and like I said, you know, if you're sort of like a Jack Daniel's Old Number 7 fan, then, you know, that's obviously going to appeal to you. The Sweden Rock, yeah, that's kind of more classic sort of Mac Mira. It's kind of simplified Mac Mira, I suppose, and I don't mean that in a derogatory term. It's kind of like sort of, you know, I mean, I love Mac Mira purely in American oak, because it is such a lovely estery, fruity spirit, and sometimes you just want to kind of like leave it alone to a certain extent and just let the spirit sort of, you know, show its kind of character. And I think in this particular bottling it certainly does. Yes, there's a little bit of sherry, but that's kind of quite subservient to the American oak component, and I think really, really good. The Groovegeld, like I said, it had that very wet, stony, minerally kind of character, and whether that's the association, because I know it's been aged in the Bodas mines, or whether that character really is there. It's one of those kind of conundrums, isn't it? It's kind of like, you know, it's a bit of a Schrodinger's cat kind of whiskey, isn't it? You know, I don't know what state it's in unless I open the box, and then opening the box, you know the whole thing, don't you? But anyway, so what I'm trying to say is that is that the character? Is it kind of wet stones? Is that what has been imparted by aging in the Bodas mines, or is it my imagination? God only knows, but it's there, you know. So, you know, maybe you guys get hold of some and buy a bottle, and you tell me if you think that you pick up kind of wet stony notes in it. And the Moment bottling, the Falmark, and yeah, I love it when they play around with cloudberry wine. I mean, maybe one of these days I'll get to taste what cloudberry wine actually tastes like. Again, like I said, I think sort of the combination of casks worked well. They were really well balanced. Angela's just done you know, an absolutely stunning job of bringing together all these different cask types, and you sort of like, you know, you look at it on paper and think this could be a complete and utter mess. You know, all these different characteristics of the oak, but you know, in the hands of a skilled blender, you get a skilled and, you know, pretty damn good whiskey at the end of it, has to be said. And talking of damn good whiskies, the Schmogen Barrique. We have some in stock. Should you feel the necessity to purchase a bottle, maybe, you know, it is on the website, and it is just superb. It's just, you know, and this is what I love about Schmogen, and what Parr's doing is kind of like, you know, it doesn't have a range. He doesn't have to worry about bottling a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old or whatever. It's a case of, what madness do I fancy getting to now? You know, it's like, what do I want to bottle this time? What's ready for bottling? You know, I'm going to do a single cask, or am I going to do multiple casks? Am I going to do the wine cask? Like I said, you know, he's done all sorts, including sort of the triple distillation ones. I don't know if he's actually done an unpeated bottling. I think it would be interesting to see what. I mean, I don't think I've tasted one. I certainly can't remember if I have. And you know, maybe somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. But I have a feeling that the Parr hasn't done an unpeated bottling, but I would imagine he's probably done an unpeated distillation. I mean, considering all the other types of things that he's done, I'm sure that that has been up his sleeve. So I think that would be really interesting to see. And anyway, but there you go. That's this week's episode of the show in the bag. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you watch next week's and carry on watching as long as I keep doing. And so all that's left to say is, I'll have a bit of Motorhead. Good ramming.